Remember me? A while ago, I made a film called Easy Rider. Well, I'm here to say it's not so easy. I'm Peter Fonda. I've ridden bike for quite a few miles. Quite some time, too. It's a great way to get around. It's a good sport if you know what you're doing. If you don't know, it can be a quick ride to the hospital or even the graveyard, which are two good reasons why you should watch and listen to what this film has to say. Here's another friend of mine, Ryder Evel Knievel.
If I look like I'm rigging up for a trip into outer space, you're right. I don't swing a leg over a bike for a trip to the neighborhood drugstore unless I've got on leathers, boots, and gloves. They've saved a lot of hide, especially in accidents like mine. And goggles and a face shield are a must. They may save you from being blinded if you're riding a motorcycle behind an automobile. And a helmet? Nobody should ever ride a motorcycle without a helmet. I never do. 3 out of 4 fatalities on a motorcycle have resulted from head injuries. If the rider had been wearing a helmet, he may be alive today. Another thing that's important, don't get on a strange bike without checking the brake, the gas, and especially your rear view mirror.
You have to get the feel of a new bike, too, before you hit the road. Get familiar with the controls. For example, on some models, the foot brake is located on the right, and on others, the left. Balance varies from model to model, too. And these are things you ought to have a feeling for before you tangle with traffic. If you're an experienced rider, that should make sense. If you're a beginner, don't do any of these things, not on your own. You should be learning to ride under the supervision of a pro. Training is available through schools, police departments, and motorcycle dealers. By the way, 3 out of 5 bike accidents happen to beginners during their first 6 weeks of riding.
Boy, this is slick.
But hey, in case you're thinking that Knievel and I are a couple of nervous old ladies, let's not forget the kind of thing that Knievel has done. It isn't as hairy as this, but it still takes a lot of rider to handle a freeway. You've got a lot going for you on a bike if you really use it. If a car cuts you off, your braking and downshift will stop you much more quickly than a car. Same goes for superior acceleration and maneuverability on a bike that can get you out of bad spots fast. Take a good look. Your controls are positioned for almost instant response if your hands and feet are where they belong. Brakes, clutch, downshift, maneuverability, acceleration. And for visibility, there's nothing like it. 360 degrees of unobstructed vision if you keep your eyes open and know when and where to look. If the trouble isn't with the rider, there's still the threat of the car driver. For some reason, most car drivers just don't seem to see bikes. So you've got to think of them as asleep, blind, or drunk. The records show that 9 out of 10 bike accidents at intersections are chalked against cars turning in front of or into cycles. And in most cases, the driver will honestly claim that he didn't see the motorcycle. There is some help in making yourself as visible as you can with what you're wearing, like a white helmet. Also, if you keep a safe distance behind the car you're following and ride over in the left side of the lane, you give yourself an edge. Even when that asleep, blind, or drunk driver tries to wipe you out, you've had time and space to anticipate trouble and to avoid it. But you still can't relax after you've passed the corner. Hard statistics show that mid-block bike accidents split just about evenly with intersections. Give parked cars a wide berth. An opening door can really cream you. And never forget that bit about the sleeping, blind, or drunk driver. And it's a good idea to have your headlight on at all times, day as well as night, whether or not it's required by local laws. On a 3-lane highway, it's good practice to ride the middle lane. That means if there's trouble ahead, you can choose between right and left lanes to duck into. And stick to the side of the lane you're riding to avoid oil slicks, which are usually concentrated in the center of the lane. One thing a bike doesn't have over a car is good traction in oil, snow, or gravel. The left side of the lane is usually better than the right, of course, because a car driver can see you in his rearview mirror, while the right side of a car is generally a blind spot. But even more important, in the right or left side of the lane, you can see ahead of the car in front of you. You should be able to see at least 3 cars ahead at all times. That really counts when traffic gets rough. And forget about slot riding, man. Even if you seem to have plenty of space, that hole in between cars can disappear a lot faster than you can get through it. But if all this has you wondering if maybe you ought to sell your bike, here's an interesting hunk of information. Motorcycle police of the Los Angeles Department ride by the book, or if they don't, they're just not on the motorcycle squad anymore. They follow the rules, and they've put together a safety record of less than 18 accidents per million miles ridden. That's compared with 27.9 accidents for every million miles driven by the department's fleet of patrol cars, which is almost 10 less accidents for bikes than cars for every million miles. shows that motorcycles can be safe. So let's do a quick double take of how it can be that way with you. Here's a motorcycle safety test. Make sure you know the right answers before you get back on a bike. Question number 1. Protective clothing like boots, goggles, leathers, and helmet are strictly for beginners. An experienced rider does not need them. True or false? The answer is false. The more experienced a rider, the better he knows that he does not belong on a bike unless he is dressed to protect himself against that accident that can always happen. Question number 2. If you are a good rider, it is okay to hop aboard any bike and take off. True or false? The answer is false. It's important to check out a bike thoroughly. Brakes, gas, lights, handling, the works before you hit the road. Question number 3. 9 out of 10 bike accidents at intersections are caused by car drivers, not the motorcycle rider. True or false? True. Car drivers just don't seem to see bikes. You have to think of them as asleep, blind, or drunk. Question number 4. Chances of an accident in the middle of a block are less than at intersections. True or false? False. Middle block accidents are just about equal to intersection smash-ups, so don't relax between intersections. Question number 5. It is a good idea to ride the middle lane on a 3-lane highway. True or false? The answer is true. The middle lane gives you a chance to duck to either the right or the left when there's trouble up ahead. Question number 6. Whatever lane you are in, it is safest to ride right in the middle of it. True or false? The answer is false. The middle of the lane is where you will usually find the oil slick that can throw you. And besides, if you're directly in back of a car, you can't see far enough ahead to anticipate emergencies. Question number 7. It is safer to ride in the left side of your lane rather than the right. True or false? The answer is true. A car driver can see you in his rearview mirror. His right side is usually a blind spot. Question number 8. Riding into the slot between cars is dangerous. True or false? The answer is true. You can bet on it. That slot can disappear awfully fast, and you'd better not be in it when it happens. Question number 9. The odds are against you on a motorcycle no matter how safely you handle it. True or false? The answer is false. Police statistics show that alert, experienced riders observing all the safety rules can reduce motorcycle accidents below the normal car accident rate. Question number 10. Your headlight should only be turned on at night or on a dark day. True or false? The answer is false. Your headlight will help a lot in catching the attention of car drivers. Question number 11. Your helmet serves only one purpose, to protect you from head injury. True or false? False. If your helmet is white or light colored, it also protects you by making you more visible to a car driver. Question number 12. A car is safer than a motorcycle in every way. True or false? The answer is false. On a bike, you have greater visibility if you really bother to look, and faster stopping if you keep your hands and feet where they ought to be. Quicker acceleration, too, when you need it to pull you out of trouble. But on the other hand, it's a lot easier to flip a bike than a car, and you're not surrounded by protective steel as you are in an automobile, so that if an accident happens, you're a lot more likely to get hurt. That's why you've got to be a lot better rider than a driver. Alert every split second for fast reaction to any possible threat. Okay, that's about it. Have a good trip, but don't ride too easy.
Rest in peace, Peter Fonda. Yeah, that was kind of a bummer news. Hi everybody, I'm Skip Alzheimer of AV Geeks. I collect old educational films, and I'm playing with a new web camera. So wow, it's kind of like zooming. It's weird. Anyways, I collect old educational films and show them to folks like you all over the United States, and try to do once a month screenings. This summer I was going to try to do a screening every Friday, but I ended up being out of town more than I thought. So you got to catch some stuff in there. A lot of this stuff has been cataloged in Facebook and YouTube, so you can go and see previous shows or outings or whatever. Tonight's show is films about film. So I have some educational films and some films that were made that talk about the history of film and show how to project film, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, yeah. So in case you don't know who I am, I collect old educational films and literally have tens of thousands of them. Here are some that are not part of the 25,000 that I have that I've cataloged. These are just ones that have shown up recently that I'm trying to work my way through. So there you go. And what we do is we're actually watching them live on a telecine. So this is actually the film, Not So Easy, motorcycle safety film, narrated by Peter Fonda, featuring Evel Knievel. When I heard that Peter had passed, this is the first film that came to mind. But then after that, I tried to look and see if there was other Peter Fonda educational films out there, and there's not. And what's interesting is there's a bunch of Henry Fonda, and there's a couple of Jane Fonda, but this is probably the only Peter Fonda one that I know of. And I've always wondered, was this some sort of court-ordered, he got busted with pot, or he was drinking and driving, and this was someone's way, a judge's way to make him kind of do community service. I'm not sure. It's pure conjecture. I don't want to defame his character, but... Alright, so every once in a while I like to get real meta and show a film that talks about film. There's a lot of films, well, not a lot, but there's films in my collection that are made to talk about how to thread film, how to run film, which is ironic because if you don't know how to run film, how can you watch a film on how to run film? So this would be shown to teachers, kids in the AV club, etc. This one's called Facts About Projection. I don't have my normal table, that's why everything's low. So, I apologize if everything's off. It seems weird, because it seems weird to me. Alright, so here is Facts About Projection. Enjoy.
Well known in education that only carefully planned instruction produces maximum learning. Planning is especially necessary to achieve maximum educational value from motion pictures. This means proper study and discussion of the material in advance of screening and a follow-up of planned related activities. The careful use of films in religious education, just as in our schools, speeds up the learning process and provides more learning in less time. Industry, too, has learned that planned use of films is one of the most effective methods of communicating ideas and teaching specific skills. To show films, there are a number of excellent and easy-to-operate motion picture projectors available. There are minor differences in the operation of these projectors, such as the method for threading the film, replacing the projector lamp, cleaning the film gate, the location of the speaker, or rewinding. However, all motion picture projectors operate on the same basic principles. A sound understanding of these principles will provide a basis for operating any type of 16-millimeter projector. A typical motion picture projector consists of two sections, each with a different function. The picture section, which projects the picture from the film to the screen, and the sound section, which reproduces or recreates the sounds which have been recorded on the film soundtrack. As the film moves through the projector, it first enters the picture section. This section consists of the projection lamp, which is a very bright light source. This light is concentrated on a single frame of the film by a condenser lens. The brilliantly illuminated frame of the film is projected by the projection lens onto the screen. The lens is moved to focus the picture. As the film moves through the picture section, it pauses on each frame. In a sound projector, this happens 24 times a second. Next, the film enters the sound section. Here, an exciter lamp passes light through the soundtrack area of the film. This light is received by the photocell. Sound waves, which have been recorded as variations of light and dark areas on this film, cause the light beam reaching the photocell to vary in brightness. When the film moves, the photocell produces electrical pulsations corresponding to the original sounds. Which are then amplified and fed to the speaker. In contrast to the picture section, the film in the sound section must move smoothly and at a constant speed. Some motion picture projectors are equipped to record and reproduce magnetic sound. This magnetic soundtrack coding often uses only part of the optical soundtrack area, making it possible to use either optical or magnetic sound on the same film. In the school, the most effective use of films takes place in the classroom with its work-study atmosphere. The class has already prepared work on the subject, and before seeing the film, there is discussion of the new ideas and words that will be used. The teacher, having read the film guide and having reviewed the film, often leads the class in the discussion. Now they are ready for the film. Smooth professional projection and the integration of the film with the workaday atmosphere of the classroom greatly enhances effectiveness in learning. But to achieve this professional screening, there had to be proper preparation. Preparation in advance is the key to good projection. In the majority of schools, audiovisual equipment and the films themselves are kept in a central location. Here, under supervision, the films are checked and, if necessary, repaired, and the equipment is maintained. Much of the preparation behind good film use is in training operators in the principles of projection and in maintenance of the equipment. Some projectors are equipped with sealed, long-lasting oil reservoirs and seldom need oiling. But most projectors require regular lubrication. The oil should be placed only in the proper holes or cups. And any overflow carefully wiped away. It's the same idea as lubricating one's automobile at regular intervals. This preventive maintenance protects gears and moving parts from excessive wear. If the windshield is dirty, only a blurred image is seen. A special fluid and paper are used to give a crystal clear view. Just so in cleaning the lenses of a projector. Remove grit and brush gently with a soft brush. Use a drop of lens cleaner. Then dry, using a circular motion with lens cleaning paper. A dirty lens projects a scene like this. Clean it, and you have this. This fuzz around the edge of the picture area is dirt in the aperture. It is not only disturbing to see, but it can scratch the film. It may be removed easily with a brush. The sound projector sprocket wheels have sprockets or teeth only on one side, Sound films have sprocket holes on only one side. The soundtrack is on the other side. To reduce strain on the film during projection, the film is threaded with loops above and below the gate. These loops serve as shock absorbers. Correct loop size is usually indicated on the projector. If loops are too large, they will slap about. If they're too short, they may tear the film. About 95% of film damage happens in the first 20 feet. The lower loop must always be the correct size, and the film must fit snugly over the sound drum in order for the sound to be synchronized with the picture. This is because the sound is recorded exactly 26 frames in advance of the picture. Properly threaded film appears like this on the screen. The movement of my lips is synchronized with the soundtrack. However, if the lower loop is too short, the voice will be heard like this in advance of its picture, and the two will not be synchronized. And if the loop is too long, the voice, as you hear it now, will lag behind the corresponding picture and will again be out of synchronization. If at any time the film should break in the projector, do not patch it with tape or anything else. Simply overlap and continue winding so that later on, at the film library, the break will be found and repaired. Not only is understanding the technical operation and maintenance of equipment important, but knowledge of proper projection setups, covering varied situations, is equally necessary. The screen should be set up at the front of the room so that everyone can easily see it. The screen should be placed at least 2 screen widths in front of the first row. The bottom of the screen should be level with the tops of the heads of those in the front row. If a room can be adequately darkened, or if chairs are permanently fixed to the floor, the screen should be placed at the front and center of the class. Some rooms are difficult to darken. If this is the case, it is best to place the screen diagonally in the corner of the room by the windows. In rooms extremely difficult to darken, a lenticular screen placed in this position is most helpful. To ensure a smooth running operation, a supply of extra projection lamps, exciter lamps, fuses, and belts should be on hand. It's always a good idea to check the film before taking it to the room where it will be shown. One way to do this is by placing the reel on the projector. If the film is mounted on the reel properly, it should fit on the arm so that it runs clockwise. When held in this position, the title should read correctly. When the projector is started, you won't have this or this. The picture will be right side up and in the proper position. All films that are to be projected should be checked in advance. With much of the preliminary preparation done in the audiovisual or equipment room, where supervision and the necessary equipment and supplies are available, the final setup in the classroom can be made. This time, the projectionist is able to set up the equipment before the class has assembled. Often the setup must be made while the class is in session. The screen is placed directly in front of the projector and raised to the proper height. The projector is then assembled. The power cord is twisted around the leg of the stand to prevent the projector from being tipped over if the cord is accidentally pulled. If an extension cord is used, it should be secured by a knot. If the sound fails to operate, it may be because the plug is reversed in the outlet. The projector is ready for a trial run. The motor is turned on, then the lamp. If the image is too large for the screen, the projector must be moved closer. And of course, the reverse is also true. For the best sound, the speaker should be placed off the floor and near the screen. The speaker cord is secured in the same manner as the power cord. In a few moments, the amplifier will warm up and a hiss will be heard to indicate that the sound system is working. Testing with a card is a double check on the sound system. By leaving the cans open at the start, the changes of reels can be made quickly. It's always a good practice, if time permits, to actually view the beginning of the film in order to check the focus, the framing, and the volume. When the classroom is filled with students, the volume may have to be turned higher. A signal from the teacher and the screening is started. Preparation in advance is the key to good projection. It will result in a
Oh, that one's exciting. I definitely like that film. Anytime I see a film with a film in it, it's pretty exciting. The meta aspect of it, of especially I like when an educational film has like a character who's like, and then today we saw a film. And they show them in a class watching a film. And then it's like, I think in one case I noticed that it was a film that was the first edition of the second edition of the film we were watching. So that what they did is they, excuse me, they took some of the concepts, some of the graphics from the first edition, and they showed it in the classroom in the second edition. So it was a way to update it without having to reshoot everything. And there are actually some educational films that are shot for shot remakes when the first and the second edition come out. And well, there's one called Are You Popular, which is the first edition and the second edition are the same script, basically. But different people, different characters from probably 5 years apart. Really kind of odd. And in neither version do they act well, so that's funny. So, films about film. There were some great suggestions put out there on Facebook or and YouTube for like, hey, it'd be great if we saw this or that. I don't have a lot of those films, but it did make me think of a film that I do have, which I am happy I found it as I was running facts about projection. And so it was at the top of the stack, so thankfully it didn't fall and collapse on my head. So, I can rewind this. Just as a recap, we're showing this on film, live. Who knows what can happen. Using my new webcam, which tends to compensate for focus and for light balance. So, it's kind of an interesting thing. All right, next film. Made for kids. Teaching them about something that I'm sure they've thought about or seen. And I have a lot of films that teach kids, like they go to different places, like visit to the waterworks, visit to farm. That's very popular with city kids, showing them where farms are, and it talks about where food comes from, etc. This one is a visit to a movie studio. So you can find out, it's like watching sausage being made. The glamour has been removed, and now it's just the gristle and the raw ugliness of it all. So this is Visit to a Movie Studio. Enjoy.
Gee, I wonder what's happened to Tarzan. Hi, Tars. We were just talking about you.
Hi, Jane. Boy, what do you say we swing over to Nairobi?
Terrific. Maybe we can have a hamburger and take in a movie. Oh, boy.
Let's go. Hey, I tell you what, after the movie, we'll go get some ice cream, eh? Hey? Boy, I love ice cream. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Me, boy. You, Tarzan. Me, Jane. You buckle up.
Right.
You buckle up, too.
Would you like to know how that film was made? Let's visit a movie studio and see.
For sound.
Good.
Playback, please. Camera, will you check the tape, please?
The first step in making a film is to write a script. Next, the script is given to a director.
The script and the seatbelts back. It's really good. I'd like you to read it. And then maybe we could get together right after that.
Good.
That's the script on the Tarzan spot, right?
Right, yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'll get this phone call.
He calls an audition to select the actors.
We need 10-year-old boys to play the boy of Tarzan in this movie. About 3 will be enough. Let's hear you all do a Tarzan yell. Good, good. Josh, Joey, would you wait outside for a few minutes, please? Alan, what have you been doing lately in the way of stage plays or anything like that?
I was in the Nutcracker Ballet.
That's good. Pretend that I was going to take you to Disney World. What would you say?
Oh, boy!
Come on. How about a little more force on that oh boy? Try it again.
Oh, boy!
Fine. Why don't you wait outside, too, and we'll call you later, Alan. What do you think, Gail?
I think
The director chooses the best actor for the part.
Sure.
the actresses are here. You want to see them now?
Fine. Send in the first one.
Well, I've done quite a few things since I've been here. Here's my resume. I've done quite a few films, industrial films mainly, and commercials, and I did a feature film last fall.
Oh, sure, I swim. Yeah, and I jog, and I play a little racquetball. How about you? Play racquetball?
Gary, do you have the Tarzan set sketches ready?
Sure, Bruce, here they are.
Great.
Just finished them.
Good. I like
Since a special background or set is needed, he confers with a set designer. Many ideas are talked about and plans are drawn before the right one is chosen.
I like the treehouse. Looks like a treehouse for a boy. Car fits under the tree fine.
How about this one?
That's the one right there. I like the garage effect.
Great, I'm glad you like it.
Electric garage opener on this one?
Sure, of course.
The stage crew builds the set, and the film crew goes to work. Carpenters, electricians, makeup, prop men, sound man, and a cameraman.
Before the cast gets in, set up a medium shot this way.
For each scene in the film, the director decides what the camera and thus the audience will see on the screen.
Can I have the cast in, please?
Lighting is like painting. You can create the mood of the scene. The cameraman can make a scene look bright and cheerful.
Joe, put a blue gel in the deuce up there.
Or dark and scary.
Fine, fine.
The focus is checked, and the camera is lined up for the first scene.
Great. Remember, Jane, a little reaction when Tarzan comes swinging in.
Okay.
Okay. Sound ready?
I need a level.
How now, brown cow?
One more time.
Testing. How now, brown cow?
Now, Joe, lower your garage door.
Okay.
Okay, let's try a rehearsal.
Okay.
Action. Come on in, Arlen.
Tell you, after the movie, we can go get some ice cream, okay?
Quite right for me. Let's do it once more. Okay. I cued Arlene a little too soon.
The director works with the actors to help them deliver their best performance.
Okay.
He plans all of their movements and rehearses them many times.
Tell you what, after the movie, we can go get some ice cream, okay? Boy, I love ice cream. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy.
Tarzan, me boy.
Okay.
Me, Jane, you buckle up.
Right.
Much better.
That it?
Much better. Cut. Let's do a take. Stand by and quiet, please. Roll sound.
Speed.
Roll camera.
Speed.
Latest. 6-3-32.
The slate helps get the sound and picture together. We'll see that later in editing.
And after the movie, we can go get some popcorn, okay? After that.
Cut. Let's do another take. Jane, come in just a little bit slower on this one.
Okay.
Let's do it once more. Let's roll sound.
Speed.
Camera.
Speed. Slated.
6-4-34.
Quiet, please. And action.
And after the movie, we can go get some ice cream, okay? Oh, I love ice cream. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy.
Cut. That was great. Can I have a playback? Let's wrap it all up for her.
After all the shooting is done, the film is sent to a special laboratory where it's developed. Then the really interesting part of making a film begins, editing. Lots of film was shot, and many different ways of doing it were tried. Now the director and editor must choose the best scenes and put them together in order according to the script.
Bruce, I want to make the cut right here.
That's a good point right
Yeah.
there.
And then I think we've got to move to a 3-shot. Will you check the script?
The film is cut apart, and only what we want to see is then taped or spliced together.
Hi, Jane.
Maybe a reaction shot of Alan would go in there good.
Maybe we can have a hamburger and...
Try it once more.
Okay.
Run it to scene 4.
Stop it here.
Yeah. Now, let's go back to the 3 shot. I think we've got a close-up that should be cut in there.
Oh, all right.
The slate does 2 things. It identifies the scene, and the sticks or clapper, when struck together, make a sound which is recorded separately. By lining the 2 points up together in editing, the sound and picture will be in sync or together.
What do you say we swing over to Nairobi?
But look how funny it is if they're not lined up.
3-2-15. Hi, Jane. Boy. What do you say we swing over to Nairobi?
Then the scene will be out of sync. Visual effects, like fades and dissolves, are indicated, as are the titles. The titles, of course, are made in the art department and then photographed on the title stand.
Remember, buckle up for safety. Is that okay, Bruce? Is that what you want?
The narration is recorded on 1 track.
Take 2. Remember, buckle up for safety.
And the music and sound effects are recorded on separate tracks. All the soundtracks, dialogue, narration, music, and sound effects are mixed or blended together and re-recorded onto 1 track.
Yeah, then they should come down when Tarzan comes in.
Here he comes. We're going down.
Look good to me. How
I
about
think
you?
we got one problem there yet. Maybe we ought to look one more time.
Try it again?
After the film is edited and mixed to everyone's satisfaction, it's sent to the film laboratory, where all the pieces of film and sound are printed and processed together. In sync, onto 1 piece of film, just like the one in your projector. They're all still pictures. They don't move. But when projected, they go by so fast, our eyes think they're moving. That's the magic of movies. It's really all a trick. And now that you know how we make movies, would you like to see the film again and see if you can spot the contributions of the technical people like the sound men, mechanical people like the electricians and carpenters, creative people like the artists and writers, and multi-talented people like the cameraman, the editor, and the director.
Action.
Gee, I wonder what's happened to Tarzan.
Hi, Tars. We were just talking about you.
Hi, Jane. Boy, what do you say we swing over to Nairobi?
Terrific. Maybe we can have a hamburger and take in a movie.
Oh, boy.
Let's go. Hey, I tell you what, after the movie, we'll go get some ice cream, okay? Hey? Boy, I love ice cream. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Me, boy. You, Tarzan.
Me, Jane. You buckle up.
Right.
You buckle up, too.
Remember, buckle up for safety.
Yeah, so Tarzan looked familiar. As soon as I saw him, I was like, I think that's the guy that was in Purely Coincidental. And sure enough, I attached a link you can look at. So, that wasn't quite like going to a big movie studio, but it was definitely, showing what it goes into making a educational short, which I definitely like. But I wasn't like going to MGM or Paramount or something like that. Great film though. Shows how they made films in the 70s. So I think what's interesting is that probably any or every large city in the United States, and even medium-sized ones, had all that equipment, had a studio that made films made commercials, made educationals, made industrials. They were all over the place. And TV stations had their own film labs because they were shooting film. So you want to think about the loss, all those jobs and all that technology. Like film was everywhere. Yeah, and some cities had more than one film studio. And so when someone says like how many educational films were made or industrial films, you have no way of knowing, because sometimes you'd have a local or regional company that would make something and they would only make it internally or make it for their client, and they wouldn't list it anywhere. So it wouldn't be in a copyright record, it wouldn't be listed in business screen or educational screen or religious screen. So there's scores and scores of countless productions that may or may not have been documented at some point. See how this one runs. This is March of Time, which was a series of films made by Time magazine in the 30s, 40s, 50s. This one talks about early film and about the ways that people are trying to preserve it. Back in the 50s, I believe, or late 40s. And it gives shout outs to my friends at MoMA. Oh, come on. I'm misbehaving. There we go. Shout out to my friends at MoMA who, don't get me wrong, this is all anecdotal, but they were one of the first ones that started preserving American film history back in the day. So here it is, Movies March On.
Have been hardly 40 years after the great train robbery, the art of telling stories with camera and film has become the nation's fifth greatest industry, with a capital investment of $3 billion. And each production is a highly speculative venture, for its story, its direction, and its cast must please the ever-changing tastes of those who support the industry, an army of 250 million moviegoers. International capital of the motion picture is a fabulously press-agented suburb of Los Angeles, Hollywood, a community whose name alone is a magic word throughout the world. But in Hollywood, where 65% of all films are produced, the making of movies is a serious and complicated business. Among the movie industry's 30,000 employees are men and women from nearly 300 trades and professions. Nowhere in the world are there craftsmen who take more exacting care. For in the making of a picture, carelessness in one single detail can mar the combined work of the hundreds whose talents go toward the making of a scene. Today, big-time movie making requires weeks and months of tireless research and preparation before a camera turns a single foot of film. And a big slice of every Hollywood producer's budget must go for the studio sets, which serve as background and atmosphere for his story. For the great movie public, becoming more and more observant, demands scrupulous historical accuracy and strictest attention to minute details. Every studio has its own museum, immense warehouses crammed with furniture and fittings, props from every nation in the world, from every period in history. But for years, Hollywood producers have paid a quarter of their total production budgets, more than $40 million a year, to the men and women who are their players. For upon the popularity of screen actors, many a producing company has built its fame and fortune. Today, the industry is more insistent than ever that its artists have something beside glamour, and it demands that they know how to play a scene, how to create a character. For with the movies no longer a novelty, but an accepted art, the cinema has a responsibility to the public, a responsibility that must be upheld with all the creative skill, the imagination, and resources at its command. Out of its collection of books and original documents on the movies, the largest library of its kind in the world, the Museum of Modern Art's film research staff is today compiling an encyclopedia of the cinema. Being added daily to this collection is important source material pertaining to a young art whose entire history has been made within a few decades. But far more vividly than in any printed book, the museum is already teaching the history of the movies to the public through its educational programs of important films of the past, today being widely circulated to U.S. colleges and museums. In New York City, the museum has its own theater, showing programs designed to trace the progress of the motion picture since the days of its crude beginnings. In 1896, the first moving pictures projected on public screens were plotless incidents, but a minute long, that amazed and scandalized their audiences. 16 years later, in 1912, the moving picture had begun to tell simple stories. In many of them, Mary Pickford was the heroine, Lionel Barrymore her leading man. By 1914, the screen had developed definite trends. The serial thriller and the westerns, which produced their greatest cowboy star in William S. Hart. same year, 1914, William Fox presented the world with the first great movie vamp, Theda Bara, whose exotic screen romances brought a nationwide storm of censorship. Throughout the early teens, winning friends for the struggling movie industry were Mack Sennett's Keystone comedies, built upon a surefire technique, the chase. In 1914, a famed stage actress, Marie Dressler, making her screen debut, had an obscure London comedian, Charles Chaplin, as her leading man in Mack Sennett's first feature-length comedy, Tilly's Punctured Romance. Almost overnight, the public discovered in this obscure London pantomimist a great artist, and made him the most popular and highly paid comedian the world has ever known. The year 1915 is one well marked in motion picture history, for it was in this year that David Wark Griffith released his mighty spectacle, The Birth of a Nation. The most important single picture ever produced, it was the turning point at which the movies became established entertainment. Early in 1918, a young prestige seeker, Samuel Goldwyn, lured Mary Garden from the opera to play in his silent version of Thais. In 1921, Rex Ingram's Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse launched Rudolph Valentino, the greatest romantic idol of the screen's history, on his short and brilliant career. By 1922, comedian acrobat Douglas Fairbanks had given the elaborate costume spectacle a permanent place in motion pictures. Giving realism and dignity to the old-time Western, producer Jesse Lasky and director James Cruz started a new trend with their epic of the covered wagon. In 1925, with The Big Parade, produced by Irving Thalberg and directed by King Vidor, the silent motion picture reached a new peak of dramatic power. The year 1927 brought to a close the era of the silent film, and the years in which, unrestricted by any language barriers, Hollywood and its stars monopolized the picture screens of all the world. Well remembered in the slow development of the talking picture are Dr. Lee DeForest, Theodore Case, and Earl Sponable, the research staffs of RCA, Bell Laboratories engineers Donald Mackenzie and Edward Winter. Well remembered, too, is the fall of 1927, when the late Sam Warner, using Bell Laboratories equipment, produced the most revolutionary picture in all movie history, a film trademarked Vitaphone that was to give to the screen a new dimension and a new power.
Mammy, I'm coming. I hope I didn't make you wait. Mammy, I'm coming. Oh, God, I hope I'm not late. Mammy, don't you know me? It's a little baby. I'd walk a million miles for one of your smiles. But
with one sound picture, the silent film was forever obsolete. Memorable was the terrifying realism of Universal's All Quiet on the Western Front, greatest of war pictures. Unforgettable in Fox Films' Cavalcade was the restrained use of sound in the recreation of Queen Victoria's funeral.
Five kings riding behind him.
Gum, she must have been a very little lady.
Through the talkies, Will Rogers was endeared to millions throughout the world.
Well, all I know is what I read in the paper.
In Zola, Paul Muni demonstrated for all time that the talking picture was unquestionably a modern art.
Before France, before the whole world, I swear that Dreyfus is innocent. By my 40 years of work, by all that I have written to spread the spirit of France, I swear that Dreyfus is innocent. May all that melt away. May my name perish if Dreyfus be not innocent.
So young is Hollywood that many of its earliest pioneers are still active in the industry. Men like Nicholas Skink, able chief of MGM, and his brother Joseph, chairman of the board of 20th Century Fox. Harry Warner, an industry veteran of 36 years, is president of the great Warner Brother Enterprises. Heading Paramount is Barney Balaban, who entered the picture business in 1908. Still a big name in Hollywood, Cecil B. DeMille made his first feature nearly 30 years ago. Back in the studios, working with Hal Roach, is the great D.W. Griffith. On the stages of 20th Century, The veteran laugh makers Buster Keaton and Mac Sennett are at work again. Ever a master showman, wise old Samuel Goldwyn has for an assistant a son of the President of the United States. As overlord of the movies, shrewd diplomat Will Hayes has been steering the industry through its problems and crises for 17 years. Since 1930, the Hayes Production Code, voluntarily adopted by all major producers, has been law to Hollywood's movie makers. To Will Hayes' enforcement officer, genial Joe Breen, has gone the difficult job of making sure that no picture offensive to any race, class, or creed shall reach the screen. For in all its years, Hollywood has pursued one great objective: to please and entertain its public. But the Hollywood of 1939 is finding that the public has new ideas of entertainment. Richly has it rewarded Walt Disney, whose Snow White shattered traditions and box office records and established a new kind of feature, a new kind of movie star. Another tradition breaker is Jack L. Warner, smart and successful producer of a long list of films in which the public has found both entertainment and significance. Meeting the growing demand for important drama, RKO's president, capable George Schaefer, has signed Raymond Massey for the part of Lincoln in the screen version of 1939's Pulitzer Prize play. Representative of Hollywood's growing progressiveness is Walter Wanger, soon to produce Vincent Sheehan's outspoken narrative on present-day problems.
And we have facts to face: wars abroad, social and economic distress at home, threats to democracy everywhere. It is time for us to assume our responsibilities and to deal truthfully and freely with the problems which face us today.
Master of the art of motion picture entertainment is Columbia's ace director-producer Frank Capra. For his newest picture, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, director Capra has drawn on the almost untouched wealth of story material on the national political scene. For John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, 20th Century's Darryl Zanuck has paid $75,000, announced that he will faithfully portray the plight of U.S. migratory workers. And eagerly awaited by moviegoers everywhere is a film in which the world's most feared political figure will be burlesqued by the world's greatest comedian, 50-year-old Charlie Chaplin. But to Hollywood, each new trend is an experiment. For 250 million moviegoers each week pass final judgment on the most powerful medium of expression the world has ever known, an art form as great as any in man's history. Time marches on.
All right. Movies march on. This film might have actually been from a lot earlier. Let's look it up. You mind if I look it up? Hopefully it won't crap out. Movies march on what year? March of Time. Let's see. I'm looking here. You look at me looking at his 30s, probably, maybe. No. No. Movies march on. 1937 is the date that I'm finding. So 1937. It's yeah, long time ago. Just before we were in the war. But yeah, you get to see MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, and how they begin their process of collecting film and the history of film. And I commented on YouTube. So it's unfortunate when you see like Birth of a Nation, one of the most important films made to solidify that motion pictures are an entertainment medium, and they show like Klansmen going through, and then they say, you know, the first talking picture with sound, and it's Al Jolson in blackface in The Jazz Singer. It's hard. I know you can contextualize it, but it's just hard to say like, hey, young people, look at our wonderful film history. It's really, I mean, I'm laughing, but it's tragic. Yeah, oh, yeah, he's in blackface, but he's not really doing blackface, except that he's in blackface. And that movie isn't mostly about the Klan, but it really is about the Klan. So, yeah, it kind of paints them as heroes, so, oops. Yeah. Oh, U.S. film history. All right. Yeah. I'm all right. This film just kind of popped out of the can onto the floor. I'm all right. Okay, so this last film we're going to watch, put my glasses on to actually read it. The title, it's Lyman Howe's High Class Moving Pictures. It's a film that I think was made in the 80s and actually talks about an itinerant film exhibition person. So before many movie theaters existed, you had people who traveled around with projectors and with films, and this is their businesses. They actually showed motion pictures, showed films in tents. Kind of like AV Geeks when I travel, although I don't show in a tent. I, travel with the films and a projector because it's a rarity, and show things to entertain audiences of all ages in theory. But someone was talking about early film stuff, and this one popped in my head, and I haven't really shown this anywhere, so I'm excited to show it. If you like AV Geeks, we collect old educational films and show them to folks like you all over via internet, and we do live screenings. You can donate at Patreon, or go to AV Geeks and watch some movies, order some DVDs, or tell your friends to watch these upcoming screenings. I'm not sure when I'm doing the next one, because August, September is going to be kind of crazy for me. But maybe we'll try to do one on Friday. Around lunchtime Eastern Standard Time. I don't know. Basically, I'm going to be helping do the VHS-tival in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we're going to celebrate VHS culture. A whole nother aspect of AV Geeks is VHS. We used to collect VHS before we collected film. We're a tape trader, so we used to tape trade. Anyways, there's a whole celebration like right around Labor Day weekend. Joe Bob Briggs is going to come into town and do his redneck presentation. Found Footage Festival is going to come into town. Jeff Krulik, who made Heavy Metal Parking Lot, is going to come into town. We'll have some other filmmakers here. Also some great things that really got their launch on VHS, even though they were shot on film. They just didn't get distribution until the VHS version came out. So like Basket Case and Toxic Avenger, things like that. But anyway, so here's Lyman Howe's High Class Motion Pictures for somebody. Enjoy. I'm going to remember to change the microphone this time. All right, second thing I'm going to do after I transition. See, I'm going away.
In 1912, when his luxurious three-story home was completed, it had servants' quarters, guest chambers, a billiard room, and a wine cellar. And it was located in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The owner of this home was a showman, an entrepreneur. He had gained national reputation as a traveling exhibitor of moving pictures. His name, Lyman H. Howe. Long before Lyman H. Howe's moving picture shows, enterprising promoters had traveled with all kinds of entertainment to America's small towns. There were magic lantern shows with hand-tinted glass slides which gave the illusion of motion. Circuses and Wild West shows were also popular in the early 1880s. It was about this time that Lyman H. Howe invested all the money he had and all that he could borrow to launch his career as a traveling exhibitor. With a partner, he bought a working model of a coal mine, including the apparatus that breaks up the coal, and they advertised it as the mechanical wonder of the age. It weighed 5,000 pounds and was powered by 2 steam engines. They hauled it from town to town for a few difficult years, until 1884, when they arrived with it in Baltimore, broke. Lyman H. Howe set up the attraction as a tent show back in Pennsylvania coal country, where he made money with it for a few more years. He finally sold it at a profit and turned his attention to something new. In 1890, he bought an Edison phonograph. By adding a 6-foot tin horn to the machine, he was able to amplify the sound so that it could be heard by a large audience. The audiences heard everything from mockingbirds to marching bands, as well as recordings made during the performance. He traveled as far west as Michigan, splitting the profits with church groups and other sponsoring organizations. Newspapers called him Professor Howe. In 1893, Lyman H. Howe peered into Thomas Edison's new machine, the kinetoscope, and he saw pictures that moved. Like many others, he tried to obtain one of the first projectors that the Edison Company put on the market. When negotiations failed, he turned to local craftsmen to implement his own design. He called it The Lyman H. Howe Animatoscope. On December 4, 1896, an audience crowded into the Wilkes-Barre YMCA to see his projector and the films he had purchased. The local newspaper praised his projection machine and said that Lyman H. Howe had nothing to fear from his competitors. The films were alternated with selections from his phonograph. He was almost 40 at the time of that first show, with 15 years of experience as a traveling exhibitor. Lyman H. Howe was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania on June 9, 1856. Son of a successful manufacturer, he was the youngest of 8 children. The anthracite coal industry was bringing prosperity to Wilkes-Barre, and Lyman H. Howe took advantage of what his hometown had to offer. First, he worked his way up to baggage master on the railroad, and then went into business as a sign painter. A born salesman, he once sold a full warehouse of telephone amplifiers. Some of the people who bought them didn't even own telephones. Lyman H. Howe married in 1888. A son was adopted in 1901. Painful problems with one of his legs made it necessary for him to have a driver.
You see, I drove for Lyman Howe in my summer vacations. He was a good barnstormer, ballyhooer. He was good at that. He wanted to get his pictures out where a lot of people could see them. That was the motive that kept him going, made him want to expand.
He started with the cities on his phonograph circuit. The recorded sounds added a dimension of realism. When the Black Diamond Express raced toward the audience at 60 miles an hour, some of the people nearest the screen jumped from their seats, afraid that the speeding train was coming right straight at them. There were, of course, problems. Transporting the equipment, a different city almost every day, films so flammable. A burning cigarette forced an end to one whole season's tour. Moving pictures offered the opportunity for quick profits. Some failed, while others became his rivals. He responded to claims of other exhibitors with guarantees of his own. When one of his employees wanted to start his own show, Lyman H. Howe told him to get the evil out of his heart and be glad to work for a man who was a winner. By 1900, his programs included 40 to 50 films. Musical interludes and short entertainments were part of the 2-hour show. He charged as much as 75 cents for one ticket. He claimed to have personally supervised the filming of the moving sidewalks at the Paris Exposition. He said his shows were amusing and refined and educational. Pictures from Atlantic City gave some people their first look at crowds of sunbathers splashing in the ocean. One of his programs featured films on the assassination and funeral of President McKinley. In 1901, Mr. Howe claimed the record for a single performance of moving pictures in the United States. Between the actualities, he often used novelty films, like the trick pictures of the French illusionist Georges Méliès. He showed a dramatic reenactment of the coronation of Edward VII of England, and he called it an imperial pageant of unexampled splendor and magnitude. Scenes from the Boer War, whether real or staged, were very popular. He said the entire globe had been searched for the thrilling scenes that only bravery and money could procure. The programs usually ended with a short comedy, like the antics of Buster Brown and his dog. He said he would not include anything that might be offensive to his audience, such as Edison's film, in which a baby elephant is electrocuted at Coney Island. The Great Train Robbery of Edwin S. Porter. While other exhibitors were experiencing tremendous success with this 1903 story film, Lyman H. Howe continued to feature actualities. He expanded his staff. By 1904, he was directing 4 traveling companies from his offices in Wilkes-Barre. The shows were promoted as the epitome of moving pictures, and he promised an entirely new program twice every season. His exhibitions played in opera houses and legitimate theaters as far west as Missouri. By 1904, his show included films he had produced himself. When Teddy Roosevelt came to Wilkes-Barre in 1905, Lyman H. Howe's cameras recorded the visit of the 26th President of the United States. His programs advertised the film as a Lyman H. Howe exclusive. In 1906, his hometown of Wilkes-Barre celebrated its centennial jubilee. There were 3 days of festivities and parades, and Lyman H. Howe's cameras were there. He continued to buy most of the travel footage he needed and to search for special novelty films, like Ferdinand Zecca's The Golden Beetle, which was tinted by hand. While Lyman H. Howe booked his shows into community auditoriums and local opera houses, some exhibitors were opening storefront theaters called Nickelodeons. They offered short programs of moving pictures for a nickel. In 1908, Thomas Edison met with the established manufacturers and distributors in an attempt to control the moving picture industry. It appears that Lyman H. Howe avoided the years of conflict that followed. The growth of the Nickelodeons continued. By 1909, there were more than 500 in New York City alone. That same year, Lyman H. Howe took his film exhibition to the world's largest playhouse, the New York Hippodrome. The scenes were accompanied by Mr. Howe's piano player and by the theater's 26-piece orchestra. There were people trained to do the sound effects. Actors read dialogue from behind the screen in the comedies. When Mr. Howe returned to the Hippodrome 2 weeks later with an entirely new program, Billboard magazine said, "Lyman H. Howe wants the people to go home satisfied, to come again, and, of course, to pay again." His 5 road companies duplicated that success in other large cities. His staff sometimes rehearsed for 2 weeks to perfect the sounds. In the smaller towns, they hired schoolboys to help.
A gentleman who was employed by Lyman Howe's put us through the paces. And then he'd say, now, when this lady drops a plate, I'll go like this, and you'll have the sack with all the broken plates in there. Just drop it as hard as you can.
We had a bicycle back there, and of course, one fellow would turn that, and the other fellow would put the spokes in there and all, and he'd draw it back out and put it back in again, and in that way, why, we would make it sound as though it was an airplane taking off.
To make horses gallop, we had 2 coconut shells apiece, one in each hand. Clop, 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 clop. I clopped down the street, and people hollered and yelled. They couldn't believe it. A river, a real fast-flowing river. And we had to work fast, too. We had great big blocks of sandpaper on a great big long board. There was about 6 of us, and they just like it was water. It was so real and so realistic.
It was 1911. His goal, the first successful moving pictures taken from an airplane.
I was right in the middle of everything there. Well, they hunted the plane all over to find a place where they could put it because it had to be cranked by hand. And we lashed it on there somehow and got it on there good and tight. When the camera was all set up and Lincoln Beachey was ready, he took off, and Lyman Howe followed him with the camera through his taking off and his landing.
After premieres in Pittsburgh and in Chicago, he showed the films in more than 500 theaters.
Well, we just thought it was impossible, that's all. I can't describe it any more than that. He did the stunt of having the plate somersault and turn around, and it was quite sensational.
I was 11 years old then. And as I recall, you could point out the different sections of the city. As far as I was concerned, and the audience, I think it was the first time they had ever seen a picture taken from an airplane.
And the bridge girders were crowded with people. And here he came, right at him. He came down, and the grass was wet, and the plane just slid right into the fence.
Lyman H. Howe's exhibitions were often welcome in places where some moving pictures might be censored. He said he preferred to put his faith in the sound judgment of the American people. And he predicted that flaming stories of war, love, and revenge wouldn't last. But soon there were longer story films, like Birth of a Nation. And there were elaborate moving picture palaces. Both were a threat to the few remaining traveling exhibitors. He began to send his cameramen on longer trips to bring back more extensive footage from places like Hawaii.
I would say I was alone about 15 years old when I first saw Lyman H. Howe Travel Festival. And what impressed me mostly about his performance was the accompaniment that he gave it, both in sound effects and music.
And Lyman Howe came along with a scholarly approach, which wasn't scholarly at all, pure showmanship. Played as a first-class attraction. He was enough of a showman to build it up that way.
The whole show just kept building up till they finally shot the cannon of the Panama Canal, and that was a grand finale. They had a barrel backstage with a shotgun, and they shot into this barrel and put half the audience out of their seats.
One of his cameramen spent 2.5 months in Panama while the canal was under construction. One reviewer wrote that the only reason we don't know how the pyramids were built is that Lyman H. Howe was born too late to film the construction. In 1915, his shows featured a trip through the canal and highlights of the 2 California expositions celebrating its opening. He introduced scenes of the San Francisco exposition with trick pictures made by artists in his Wilkes-Barre studios. His moving pictures made the exposition come alive for people all over the East and Midwest. His cameraman recorded one of the most significant events of the exposition. A special parade celebrated the end of its cross-country trip. San Diego held its own exposition and declared a special Lyman H. Howe Day. The official motion pictures of the exposition were taken under his supervision. It was announced that a print of the pictures taken that day and a print of his film on the Panama Canal would remain sealed in the archives, preserved for future generations. The San Diego Union, a newspaper, called him the biggest producer of travelogue motion pictures in the country. He attributed his success to his educational subjects. But now the motion picture industry was moving in quite a different direction. He was able to attract audiences for another 3 years with travelogues, a series on the Navy. By 1918, Lyman H. Howe attractions could no longer compete. The last of his 6 road shows was called Home. Lyman H. Howe lived long enough to know that an updated version of his old film, Ride on a Runaway Train, played a command performance at Buckingham Palace in 1922. It's ironic that he is most often remembered for a series of 110 short films produced by his company after his death. New animation was added to the travel films, and the Lyman H. Howe hodgepodge accompanied feature films for more than a decade. Somebody had once asked him for the secret of his success. The secret of success, he said, is no secret at all. The more the exhibitor does, the greater will be the measure of his reward.
Hey, that was great. I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. I've seen that before, but there were some details that I picked up again, and how great Lyman was for doing travelogues and actuarial films or actualities. They were definitely the precursor to modern educational films. There's a journal I have which is called Educational Screen that came out in the early 20s, and it kind of talks about films that were being released and that were in distribution, that, you know, what is the educational value of a educational film, because they were marketed as educational films when they were shown by Howe and in theaters, and it was usually just footage of something like San Francisco earthquake, or of the Panama Canal being built, or of some natives. I just did a big scanning project for a friend at Oregon Cinema in Pittsburgh, and they got a bunch of films that were part of what's called the Mogul Film Library, and it was a camera shop in New York City that rented out films, and a lot of them were these educational films. So they were silent, they showed footage, they had educational content with title cards. And so when there was a legitimate educational film market and educational film organization that was like, okay, can we show these in schools? Should we show these in schools? Then there was this, like, well, let's judge. What is there educational value in this? Is this factual, or is it anecdotal? Because certainly there were films that were being made by filmmakers who were kind of making up shit basically. They were making up stuff like, what tribes were doing. They were doing it based on, the lore as opposed to the actual, science of it. So educators were getting very sensitive to that, and they wanted to make sure that some of the smutty films, or the films that were a little racier, would not make it to young eyes, impressionable eyes. So that's that anxiety. And then eventually what started happening is companies started editing and making ones specifically for educational film markets, and started pulling some of this material out, licensing the film, or buy film libraries, add narration when there was sound, all this stuff that started happening at some point. So it's kind of interesting to have that there were educational films before they were actually being shown in schools. I don't have them because they're almost all in 35, but I did, like I said, I transferred a bunch recently, and some of them are on YouTube, I think, slowly making way to YouTube and Internet Archive. If you're a big fan of films on Internet Archive, I've been helping Rick Prelinger get probably close to 3,000 more films from his collection online, and that includes educationals, industrials, home movies, amateur films. So that's been a big push that we've been doing here this summer. Also, we have been digitizing more of our stuff and slowly getting it online. So over the next couple of months, you're going to probably see thousands of more films from our archive and from other archives that we've been working with to get online. If you like what you saw, again, Patreon is a place to donate. Go to avgeeks.com if you want to buy DVDs. Tell people about what we do. Have people come to our shows. I'm doing a screening at the Hunt Library on NC State campus to a bunch of college kids. It's always interesting to show old films to new college kids who really don't even understand what film is. And this one is the screening coming up on Friday is they're actually pulling the films from their archive, and they're having me comment on it, because normally what it is I pull films from my archive, and then they have an expert from NC State come and talk about it, but they have pulled stuff from me to watch and comment on. So a little twist. Then if you're in Durham next Thursday, Ponyosaurus. I'm going to be doing a screening, Small Furry Animals and the Sins of Man. Also, for VHS Festival, I'm going to be doing a Visions of VHS